I've been flying in some shape or form for over 25 years, and in about 97 got into adventure microlighting and met up with the South African champion Alan Honeyborn, and him and I flew many expeditions around southern Africa. And on one expedition we landed on the Orange River on a sandbank, a little island in the middle of the river, and we're camping the night out, and we came up with this magnificent idea of flying around the world. We felt we wanted to do more than just fly around the world. We wanted to fly to every continent in the world. We put this expedition together, and it took us 3 years of hard planning and work. And we took off on the 17th of December 2003 and headed out up the east coast of Africa and into Yemen, Oman, across into Asia. And my daughter Natasha, living in Australia, we decided to head down all the way down to Australia and across Australia to meet up with her, which was magnificent. And then we head off from there north. We went all the way up Indonesia again into China, and unfortunately Alan had a fatal accident there, which put things into absolute turmoil and put me on a position: what do I do? Do I abandon? Do I carry on? You know, it's a dilemma that I think anyone would be challenged with. But at the same time, it was also a situation that we'd put so much into this. We'd been going for 6 months already on the expedition, set so many world records, world firsts. We had so much attention and so much momentum behind it, and you know, I couldn't just abandon it and leave it there. And Alan forgotten in some file, so I plucked up the courage to carry on going. Chinese wouldn't let me continue, so headed off to San Francisco to air freight there. Somebody from South Africa met up with me there, and we continued flying together and went further south down into the Caribbean islands. And unfortunately there, on some other sideline flight that he was on, he was taking some people for ferry flights, and he made some mistakes, had an accident, and unfortunately he also died on the but it wasn't really part of the expedition. It was on a separate flying thing he was doing, and I felt I wasn't going to just leave it like that. And Alan and I put so much into it. I was going to somehow bring out the best I could out of the expedition, and got back onto the microlight and headed north up into the United States. And the weather held me back from crossing the Atlantic. I was left with waiting a year or air freighting to London. I couldn't wait anymore under the circumstances, so air freighted to London and continued from there across Europe and across the Mediterranean into Africa again, and crossing the Sahara. It became quite a challenge at that stage, being alone for so long, all these isolated places, the Mediterranean, the Sahara, and things got mentally very, very challenging, and I had to really work on myself to keep going, but managed to do it. And 11 months later, almost to the day, landed in Cape Town, having achieved several world records, the longest microlight expedition in the world, 64,000 kilometers, 32 countries. It was just awesome, and the fulfillment that I actually made something come out of it. It wasn't just an expedition that went wrong. Alan and I are now remembered for who knows how long. We're in record books. I've written a book on the expedition. It's been a bestseller, and it's out there. Many, many people know about the story.
What was the closest record to what you achieved?
Before that, it was 37,000 kilometers was the longest expedition. We did 64,000 kilometers, which stands as a record as the longest microlight expedition in the world. You can imagine the logistics behind an expedition like this. It was huge to get permission into every country, to get flight clearances into every country, immigration, customs. It was quite challenging. We had to fly into international airports and landing at airports like Bangkok International, where there are Boeings coming in and out every 30 seconds, and now you've got to get this mosquito in amongst that whole lot and get your customs and immigration guy. So it was difficult, and bureaucracy was a very challenging part of it. Once we landed, to get fuel for the microlight was our number one priority. Once we got the microlights fueled, parked, tied down, The next mission was to try and find food, because normally we hadn't eaten the whole day. We didn't have breakfast or anything because there's no toilets on the microlight. So you had to control what you eat to control your body. And once we found food, the next thing was accommodation, and so it would go on. It was tremendous. Sometimes we had to pinch ourselves to ask, is this reality? Because one day we'd be flying past the Petronas Towers of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and a few weeks later it's Sydney Opera House we're flying past, and the next thing is Angkor Wat in Cambodia. All these highlights of the world just passing underneath us, at times across those oceans for hours, over 8 hours in the ocean, just looking at blue sky, blue sea, blue all around us, every shade of blue Mother Nature could produce. The open deserts. It was tremendous to see the world from that perspective. Okay, let me show you around the truck and you can see what it's all about. This is the flying suit we had specially made for the expedition. It's made out of special material that doesn't take in any water. So if we landed up in the sea, we could at least swim. It wouldn't make us sink. Very warm to handle all the different temperatures, but can also handle the heat. Let me show you around the rest of the trike. This is a list I made as we went along of all the various countries that we went to. It starts up at the top there, Mozambique, and so it comes all the way down through Singapore and so on, Greece, etc. And I actually forgot one country. I feel a bit bad about it, but I left out East Timor, which I've added into the bottom here, which is 32 countries. And old Nelson Mandela, well, his photographs certainly drew a lot of attention. People knew exactly where we were from. It's incredible how well known he is worldwide. Now let me get on to the technical stuff. This is a 1200cc engine, 4-cylinder engine, pretty much like a motor car. Very reliable, uses normal motor car fuel, so we could land anywhere, buy motor car fuel and put it in. It's a 1200cc. And the rest of the microlight is a pretty standard microlight. It just has an extra large fuel tank here. We'd load fuel containers on the back, and it would be sufficient for us to fly a distance of about 1,000 kilometers or be in the air for anything from 12 to 14 hours. The problem is actually sitting still for 12 to 14 hours. And the wing is a pretty standard microlight wing, and I must tell you the story about this Virgin issue. We spoke about how we wanted the logo of a large company on the wing. So this is the Virgin that we put on it, and you'll notice at the top here, not sponsored by Virgin, but hoping. But he didn't, and once the expedition was completed a while later, I managed to get a photograph to Branson. And he heard about the expedition and he just laughed about it. And on the photograph he signed, "Well done, Ricky," and in brackets, "cheapskate," which I thought was hilarious of him. And this little teddy bear was put together by, let's just say, one of the fans of the expedition, because the beneficiary of the whole expedition was the Red Cross Children's Hospital, and this was a little teddy bear to remind us about the Children's Hospital. And the objective was not that we were going cap in hand to collect money for the hospital. We were actually just creating publicity, so when they go to corporations, they're a known entity and hopefully get larger donations. And a good number of years later, life carries on. Many adventures later, South Pole and motorbiking the Americas, and now I'm off to the Serengeti to do some microlighting for an anti-poaching organization. And awesome, you know, life just, the privilege of being able to fly over those areas and be paid for it is magnificent. I get back from that and it's climbing Aconcagua in South America, and who knows what comes after that. It just continues.